Rise to the test of life. The United States of America. This isn't going out. I'm going to go out in the front and call. First up, we have a presentation by Irvine Company. Would you please stand up and state your name and your business?
Good evening, everyone. My name is Nick Bieber. I'm a senior manager with Irvine Company. I'm here to present the results for the 2024 financial audit. Might we move this on that? All right. So I handed out the PowerPoints. You'll have it in front of you for the commissioners out there if you want to take a look at a closer look. This is a little bit far away for you. But a little bit of background information. So the basis of accounting that's presented here with the financials is the modified cash basis. So just a reminder, there's not accruals for receivables or liabilities, cash in the door revenues, cash out the door is expenses. And our responsibilities as auditors is to obtain reasonable assurance about whether these financial statements are fairly presented in all material respects in accordance with the modified cash basis that was found. And then we render opinion on those under the generally accepted auditing standards. So the auditor opinion was an unmodified opinion for the 2024 audit. That's the highest level that can be issued. It's a clean opinion from an independent auditor. So moving into the numbers here, first looking at the general fund budget actual results. So overall, the revenues came in $492,000 over budget, a 5.1% positive variance. Two main components here were the intergovernmental revenues. And the primary piece of that was an increase of $127,000 in state pension aid, as well as police tuition reimbursements of $62,000 that were not budgeted. And then charges for services that came in about $290,000 over budget. And that's primarily related to the host fees, with additional capacity still available for the 2024 year. There was additional revenues over what was anticipated. So still a decline from what had been in the prior year, so more than what was anticipated for the 2024 year. On the expenditure side, that came in 1.8% under budget, so about $200,000 under. Most significant variances that you'll see there are police. That was $511,000 over, primarily related to wages and benefits with 3 additional police officers. And then public works was $786,000 under. That was in relation to some delays in projects that did not get completed during the year, as well as the dump truck that was ordered back in 2022 that still had not yet been received. So again, cash basis, once that expense occurs, that's when you'll see it here. So on an overall basis, the township had budgeted a decrease in fund balance for the general fund of that $1.7 million. Actual results for the year with a decrease of $1.2 million, so positive 561 variance there. Overall, with that $1.2 million decrease, the ending fund balance in the general fund was $3,484,000. The township also presents 3 other what's considered major funds, so more significant balance sheet or revenue expense activity. So the fire protection fund, a couple highlights there. The budget use of fund balance was $842,000 and the actual results was $734,000 use of fund balance. Brought down that to $725,000 at the end of the year. And of that, there is $456,000 that's designated for capital purposes within the fire fund. Refuse collection had a budgeted surplus of $51,000. Actual results was a $286,000 surplus. Most significant variance there was charges for services came in $190,000 over budget. That was more conservative budgeting based on prior year actual collections for the percentage. Good collection rate for the 2024 year resulted in that coming in over budget. And then lastly, the capital project side. That had about just about $4 million decrease in fund balance. So that came from 13.3 down to 9.4. And that really relates to the spending of the bond monies. There's $4.4 million spent on the fire station project during the 2024 year. So that $9.4 million at the end is unspent bond funds from the 2020 issuance. And all those funds have been committed by the end of the 2024 year as far as contracts for construction projects. There's also a few non-major funds that are presented. Nothing significant there as far as within any of these for changes from the prior year or any real highlights for the end of year fund balances. So they're there for your review as far as the overall summary for the 2024 year. So the final most significant fund would be the sewer fund. So a couple of highlights there. The budget called for a use of net position of 1.45 million, but most of this coming from the capital savings portion that's within the sewer fund for capital projects. Actual results for the year was a decrease in net position of just about $2 million. And the primary components there for that being over budget was really on the operating side. The treatment costs for the city of Reading increased due to both usage and rate increases. That was $618,000 over budget for the treatment costs for the city of Reading. Capital had a couple ones that were over and under just within those categories. So pending highlights there, the net position at the end of the year is $4.4 million within the sewer fund. And of that, it's about $2 million is designated for capital purposes. This is a decrease of $1.4 million from the prior year. We planned spending of the capital sewer funds. So lastly here, this is a piece that isn't directly within the financial statements anywhere, but it's always nice seeing trend information. So this looks at the three main funds, the general fund, fire fund, and sewer fund, and gives a 5-year trend of the ending fund balance within those funds. So you'll see within both general and fire fund over the past 4 years that has been trending down for the use of fund balance, and that has been budgeted use of fund balance. So just a reminder for the continued oversight and responsible financial planning of both the township commissioners and management. That needs to remain a focal point as you look at future year budgets. Make sure that you have enough funds available to support the township's current operations and be able to respond to future needs. So our recommendation is no less than 20 to 30% of operating expenses as a reserve. So that looks at your ending fund balance as a percentage of the next year's budgeted expenditures. So currently the township at the end of the 2024 year was at 32%. So that's still above our recommended minimum. So the 2025 year did have a budgeted use of fund balance of $650,000. So going forward, obviously you can't keep chipping away $650,000 from the fund balance reserves. So just keep in mind with the budgets as you're ongoing to take a close look. And as we saw from the budget actual results, there wasn't much that was significantly off. A lot of that was really cash basis transactions. So the township does a good diligent budget. But just keep that in mind going forward as well. Next slide here is a summary of the pension plan's actual results. Focus on there's two different valuations done. One is under Act 205, so that's what drives the municipal's annual obligation for payment into that fund. Then there's also valuations under the GASB 68, so more enhanced actuarial valuations in there. But the one key component within the GASB 68 valuations that you'll see there is the non-uniform pension plan had that significant increase in the plan's fiduciary net position as well as the related liability. That resulted from the transition back to the full defined benefit pension plan for non-uniform employees. That was funded at 72% as of the end of the 2024 year, and the police pension plan was at 105%. So well funded there. So a couple items that came up during the audit and a few recommendations. Within our review of the pension payments, there is a requirement under Act 205 that when the funds come in from the state, that they're distributed into the pension plans within 30 days. That did not happen during the 2024 year. Typically, it's received during the September timeframe, and the actual disbursement went in during December. So that's something that's going to come up during the state's pension audit. And ultimately, the result there is there's going to be a calculation that performed the interest that would have been earned. So it'll be additional payment into the pension plan that's needed. So nothing significant, but just to keep in mind going forward. This hasn't been a traditional issue, it's just an oversight during the 2024 year. And also recommendation to review the township for the implementation of an acceptable use of technology policy. So I did provide to Jean a couple example templates just to get a policy in place to serve as guidance for the use of technology. So other than that, the actual results from the audit, there wasn't any significant journal entries. So that lets you know that the information that you're looking for from a financial standpoint throughout the year is in good standing. And the journal entries, they are attached to a formal communication with governance letter that I provide to Jean and she passed along as well to have it. So at this point in time, that was the highlights of the 2024 year. But if there's any questions or comments, I'll gladly take them.
Curious where the recommendation on the acceptable use policy of technology came from.
So during the audit, we do an overview of a questionnaire from an IT standpoint. And one of them is does the municipality have a policy in place guiding the use of technology? And the answer to that was no from the questionnaire. So that's something just to have an overarching guidelines in place and there's so many different components of the use of technology. There's emails, social media aspect, use of any township issue technology for personal use. So within those, and we can talk about this further if you want to take a look at the policies that I had provided just as examples. I mean, you can go from very basic to very robust policy based on the operations of the township and the size there. But we can discuss if there's any questions on particulars for any one aspect of policy that are more important than others.
I guess what I'm driving at is that just like a generic question you ask everybody, or is there something you saw that prompted you?
No, that is a generic question. Typically, what we see is that minimum in the employee handbook, there's a section on the use of technology.
Just to clarify for the board, it's not zero, but I think of the type of that Irvine was looking for, the type of answer they were looking for, it should be modernized. And I would suggest that Mr. Donnell would be a good one to help us do that. And also there are other trends that are coming forward that even during this year have come on board. AI, so-called social engineering, that kind of stuff. So it would be a good thing to modify what we have. I'm sure that what we have is not up to the current standard. So that is something we should do.
This is really the deeper look into the technology side was driven by a new accounting standard, auditing standard. That's why it was something, not necessarily something that we had looked into and recommended in the past, but the enhanced auditing standards required a deeper dive into the technology standpoint for the audit.
Anyone else? Thank you so much, James, for your.
Thank you.
Thank you, Nick. Did you want to address, or did you already address while I was doing something else about the firm? Is that?
No, not at this point.
Not at this time. Okay, thank you.
Ambulance service. Would you like to come up and state your name?
So my name is Brad Cosgrove. I'm the chief of EMS and director of emergency services for Tower Health, Tower Direct. I brought with me tonight these ways on these sunshine. Matt Wagner, it's the second day here. He's our new deputy chief of operations. So we'll introduce him to the board and to the residents. And just I'll let Matt introduce himself and give a little bit of his background, but go easy on him. It's only second day, but worked with him in other capacities in the past. So we're really excited to have him here. He's been a great addition to the community. So.
Yeah, so as Brad said, my name is Matt Wagner. I've been in EMS for about 20 years. Been in EMS and fire for about 20 years. And been in the leadership capacity for the last 14 years in some sense. Over the last 3 years or so, I was in the leadership capacity of Manquist and Downingtown in Chester County, where our previous administrator ran into some financial issues, and I was part of the team that led us out of that hole, largely with municipal support. So I'm sure you'll see a lot of me, but if you have any questions, just let me know. I'll be more happy to be my part with you guys.
Welcome aboard.
Thank you.
Welcome.
While we're up there, any questions about the reports or anything operations wise or anything else we can answer?
I remember the specifics, it was maybe a couple months ago, I asked about some reporting on the data on the it wasn't a survey, it was on. I had followed up and I don't think they got it, but it was on essentially the utilization of services across the township.
Like mutual aid?
Yeah, like mutual aid, but let me get to cut to the chase instead of like stumbling. Essentially, what I'm curious about is, as you know, Cumru Township has a fully funded ambulance service for you. And I understand that that's not universally the case.
No, it's something that G and I have worked on, and with the coalition and government that they did that report, obviously I think that's where a lot of that came from. I can say all the surrounding direct municipalities to here, actually maybe one area there may not be some funding yet. It's something we've been using the pressures of municipalities like Cumru to lean on other municipalities to frankly make them kind of pony up just like everyone else. You guys account for about 20% of our 911 service a month within Berks County and also Chester County. I was looking at the math. Last month we did 195 calls for service, just shy from 20.5%. So there is some mutual aid that would go to other municipalities, but you guys are already handling 20%. And I guess the one thing to take in consideration is, even if we're going the other direction to Safety Spring or to Missing, we don't have those agreements in place. So that's kind of the nature of the beast when it comes to the mutual aid that we have to go regardless of where we're dispatched. So it's a little bit of a blessing and a curse, but it's something that we're actively pursuing. We also just for information, renegotiated or changed contracts with a lot of our insurance partners, so we were in network getting direct payment. And frankly, they weren't paying their fair share, so we got to renegotiate them to help ease any additional burden we ask from the townships. Because you guys all pay a lot of money for insurance, and newsflash, they don't like giving it up. I'm sure everyone's aware of that, but it's a constant struggle. So that's something we've been really working on, and focused is kind of a multi-arm approach to funding and sustainability, not just township support. Yeah, thank you. Any other questions?
It sounds similar to the situation in NATO, where a lot of companies are doing their fair share.
Yeah.
On a percentage basis, how much of the population is in the township versus the other? You're paying 20%, right?
No, you're using 20% of our 20% of our 911 volume. So we're a little bit unique in the fact that we also support the health system. We do 80% of the transport work within the health system. So we have additional resources, but in terms of efficiency and opportunity, we use those same trucks to do inter-facility work while we have agreed upon numbers of units available for Cumru and other areas. One of our kind of secret sauces has been we have contiguous territory, so we have the ability to ship trucks in terms of geography based off of call volumes, and we also have a 24/7 supervisor to help, stratify that load across the system. I don't have the exact numbers. I mean, you guys are obviously a class 1 township, you're a big township comparatively, but we do everything right now from a municipal funding stance on a household basis. So it's directly related to the number of households you have in the community, and that's how we come up with the derive the figure for municipal funding.
Yeah, I guess building on Glenn's point, I don't want to put you between a rock and hard place. I realize you guys are in a tough situation and have a service where you have to go on your call. So I don't take this the wrong way. But I think, like Glenn said, and sort of what I'm curious about, not necessarily, I certainly wouldn't want to defund our ambulance service. Again, don't take this the wrong way. But I realize we utilize perhaps 20% of the capacity of your services. But where I'm more curious is what percent of the services do we fund? Because if we're funding 30% but utilizing 20%, that means 10% is essentially Cumru Township subsidizing other townships or boroughs that aren't paying their fair share. And I don't think there's a one word or short answer.
I can give you a couple quick figures. So the average 24/7 staffed ambulance is about $1 million a year. So we are, and I can get Gene's for those figures and I'm happy to share them. We track by month, by call type, the average cost per trip and the average reimbursement. So I can tell you that the way of the world of EMS, where it used to be small communities and they had 1 or 2 ambulances, if you don't have the multipliers and efficiencies, you're not going to be sustained anymore because no one's going to be able to shoulder that load. Our average cost per trip right now is around $800. You got to give you exact figures. And our average reimbursement is about $400 or $450. So we're losing money. So for anyone who owns a business, who's going to go in business and say, every time we got the door, we lose $350. So that's where we're fortunate to have the backing of the health system to offset that, because we do that in our facility work, but it's always a constant struggle. And again, that's where we're going back to these different insurance providers and say, hey, these people are paying a lot of money to get, good health coverage. Why are we fighting over nickels to sustain that? So you guys none of the municipalities all combined aren't even maybe paying for 10% of the overhead operating costs in total, because we have at any given day between 9 and 11 trucks on the road plus the supervisor. We start looking at those costs annually. But you guys have always been a strong supporter, and it's definitely, there's a lot of uncertainty in the industry right now, both healthcare and EMS. But it's something that we're really trying to put our heads together, and that's why we're really fortunate to have someone like Matt who has more experience. Because frankly, my brain's a little tired right now to bounce other ideas off and get creative. So something we talked about with Gene in the past was also some different programs like the horse racing funds, and having some municipal support for that to go after grants, stuff like that. So we're really trying to think outside the box. And I think the innovation that we've done with the blood programs and the other things in the past, we're always trying to figure out a different way to do it. because that's how you're gonna sustain and grow and keep providing the service to people.
I just want to point out that I hope we continue to be strong supporters. If there is any frustration, it's certainly not with you guys. It's.
No, I don't feel that way at all, honestly, so I appreciate it, and I think the best way to describe this is to have these conversations and let others know, because I think there is a big misnomer of education surrounding the entire industry right now. So, you know, obviously we're passionate about it, but we're also passionate about making sure that you guys all have, your community has the best support and skill set possible, which is what I've done. I think. By the way, we're up to like 80 blood transfusions, so we're pretty proud of that. It's the busiest in the state. So we're doing some research around that now, so it's pretty great to see what happens. So. Anything else?
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
For the public, we originally had Alan Schallenberger, and he's not here, from Route 10 Realty. I believe Gene said, he was finding the letter being read or something to that effect.
That the board could, at its convenience, read the letter and let the letter speak for itself.
And we'll move on to Mr. Glenn Emery. You'd like to stand up and state your name and your address, please.
I'm not doing something. Glenn Emery, 40 Fairway Road. Before I speak, is it possible to have that letter read?
That's up to the board.
I think I read it, it's like 3 pages.
How about the meeting plan? Or a summary? Or the letter? Okay.
I mean, we'll read it. You know, could narrate it, be story time or something. I don't have it right in front of me. Does somebody else have it?
I have it, I mean, I can give him a short without putting words in Mr. Schallenberger's mouth. His letter basically is just discussing the, what's on the agenda tonight for the proposed repeal of the LRTA ordinance for the Route 10 Realty properties. His position, or his client's position rather, is that there is a stipulation and order that was entered into on September 27th, 2022, when all the validity challenge hearings were going on, basically preventing the Board of Commissioners from taking any action on any subdivision or land development plan applicable to the land at issue in the LRTA ordinance, including the North Point development. So his position is that because the Board of Commissioners agreed to be stayed from taking action on those plans, that they are therefore not permitted to take action on repealing the LRTA, because in order for them to have taken advantage of the LRTA, they would have had to have the ability to move forward with the plans. Because you can't ask for the LRTA application to be approved or for the property to be truly accepted into the LRTA program unless you're actually building improvements on property. That's the basis of the plan.
Thank you. And thank you, gentlemen. I just have one question about the blood transfusion. Where can we give blood in this township?
So we have been doing them, we do them at the hospital monthly, and I'm happy to share that. It's on our Facebook page, but we can also share it with the township Facebook pages. So we've done, we're another Keystone blood bank. We do it once a month where we can do blood transfusion, blood donations. But yeah, we have blood on our critical care truck in the hospital, our supervisor truck in Cumru, and then down in Phoenix.
So that's Miller Keystone?
Miller Keystone blood bank, yep. Yeah.
I just took the dive and now the meeting works, so.
We appreciate it. We'll put it to good use.
Obviously, costs are going up. The report by Net talks about things that were kind of alarming, and that is how we seem to keep nicking away at the general fund. And I just have some numbers here regarding LRTA, and I'm just going to use a number of $250,000, which seems to be the number that's been tossed around here. So I'm not an accountant and I'm not an attorney, but I am a citizen and I am involved in the budget and the resources of our township. So if we look at what would happen with that order that is in place, it would be an amount of $2,500,000. Now, when you take the elevated ladder payment going from 10% all the way to 100%, at the end of 10 years, we would get $1,375,000 versus what we would get in full would be $2,500,000. So that's a deficit of $1.125 million. It's a lot of money, especially when we have a situation where we're trying to tighten things up, save our money, and make our resources work. So I just think that, I look at people that are doing business, and I know it's important that they do business, but these companies tend to make a lot of money. And over the course of 10 years, I would think that the amount of money that they save shouldn't really be putting a dent into their bottom line. They make a lot of money. We don't have a lot of money. Our expenses are going up. Your expenses are going up at home. And I just don't feel that it's correct to give these types of advantages and to these people that are going to make a lot of money on this. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Mike Malachowski, please come up and state your name and address. Sorry if I chopped up your last name.
That's all right. Everybody. Hi, Michael Latorsky, 1098 Freemanville Road, Reading, Pennsylvania. So tonight, as you can see, I got one wing down, so I've had some time to sit in my front porch and watch traffic. So at the new light at Freemanville Road 10. As I sit here and watch cars screech, halt, sit there and read their engines, I'm starting to notice that when the school buses are coming home with the kids, they're coming off 40-mile-an-hour hill on the climb onto Freemanville Road. For them to actually stay on the road in their lane, they would have to almost stop on Route 10 to make that right. I watch him. I'm a truck driver. Been driving trucks for 45 years. There is no way that a truck or a bus can make that turn at speed, but there's no signs in the middle of the stop in an intersection that says halfway through they need to slow down. People come around the corner, they're applying their brakes best they can. School bus with its long tail swing, and it does that. That swing of the school bus tail swings out into northbound lane. I watched it. Also, probably at least 75% of the cars entering Freemanville Road from southbound 10 do not stay in the lane. They swing all the way out onto the eastbound side of Freemanville. That road was so poorly designed, so put in so quickly that no one thought that why would you put an S turn in the middle of an intersection? So the street used to be a nice easy straight line, straight out both directions. Now you actually travel about 70 feet south of the original line of Freemanville Road. So it actually, when you come off of south on 10, going west on Freemanville, when you come around that corner, you're actually have to turn back harder right than you normally would. You don't make a 90-degree turn. You're actually making probably a 100-degree turn because you're actually turning back into the path where Freemanville used to be. I hear so many splitting tires and people blowing their horns because people are trying to stay in the lanes. Meanwhile, they have to slow down so hard to make that turn, especially at, from 4 and 6 o'clock when traffic is heavy, even in the mornings. I never noticed this because I'm usually at work by 4 o'clock in the morning, 5 o'clock, and I don't get home until later in the afternoon. So I don't see all this going on, but I have taken notice of it in the last week. And I don't know do we have any resources to go to the state and say, we need this road fixed. We need this intersection fixed so that traffic can pass each other without running into each other. I mean, we haven't had any accidents. And believe me, I like the light. for my wife and for people pulling out on that road. It's a good thing. I like lights in my living room, but you gotta be. But you gotta make it safe for people to make the turn. And not have an incident at some point if we ever have bad weather again. You know, we're gonna have a problem at that intersection. Do we have any resources to reach out to the state? Because I'm assuming the state has Greenville Road. Okay, so I don't know who to reach out to. Second part of that is, we just paved Greenville Road last year. Just paved. Now I have a sign in my front yard that says fresh oil chip. So I'm wondering, why are we fresh oil chipping a road that was just paved?
We're not, the state.
That's the state order now.
I'm only as we.
Right, the state's, and that's the state's new process that they have. They will come and they will do, it's not a full depth paving. And then they come back like a year later and do the tar and chip. They did it on, Lancaster Pike. Just in the last month or so. But that's all kind of, I did call them about the signs because other people said, why are these signs up here for several months, 3-4 months? And no one's started shipping. They said they didn't get around to it this year because of weather issues and scheduling, and they hope to get to it next year. So that's what the sign is still there.
So I gotta mow around that, turn around it, something you put in my yard.
Yes.
That's great. So, that being said, so when I see, this is another part, when I see Cumru Township's, equipment clearing in our streets, you know, with their bush mowers going back people's property. Who's paying for that?
And we have a contract, a three-year contract. It's usually renewed every 3 years. It pays for 6 cycles of mowing, 2 each year. One in the late spring, early summer, and one end of August, early September. And that's what you saw probably 3 weeks ago.
Yeah, yeah.
They're out doing that, but yeah, that pays us for that.
Okay, because I'm just wondering why I can pay to mow my grass, but people with these large tracts of property, the state pays us, Cumru Township, to trim their trees, which I don't really understand how a large landowner, say, right across the street, that whatever the new the property where Northland was, why we pay to trim his trees that are falling on 10. I understand now it's through not Cumru Township, it's the state of Pennsylvania. So I'm just wondering why does anybody pay for other people's properties to take care of? Maybe everybody should tighten their belts, take care of your own stuff. I take care of my yard, you take care of yours. That's all I got.
I can tell you, we curtailed the roadside mowing in the township this year on township roads. Because, you know, we've had money issues.
Yeah.
So we have curtailed it. It's got some problems, and some complaints, but, roadside mowing goes back to the rural nature of Cumru Township.
Yeah.
And that's not right. And we mow on double state roads. Like I said, they.
Plus, the main company.
Around the month.
Technically, the township does not have to mow a damn thing unless we're being paid by another entity to do so. In the old days, when the township was a township of the second class and mostly a farming community, the township supervisors at the time were all farmers. You can see this in the very old minutes where they talk about who's gonna grade the dirt roads this year, who's gonna take their tractor and cut back the vegetation this year. They actually took turns. There became an expectation, however, that the township would roadside mow. So you have some properties where there are property owners who are not challenged for income, but expect the township to mow the side of the road. We have curtailed that. Certainly, there used to be areas where there's curbing where the township was mowing. That's completely ridiculous. And a lot of times, some of these properties, the area that's being mowed is actually landscaped. So Public Works would get complaints, you cut down my special vegetation that I spent $30,000 planting. So we have gradually cut back on mowing, and I want to emphasize that there is no mowing required by the township. Now, there are some areas that are particularly difficult to deal with, and we do get some requests. For instance, the fire department has requested that area along Cedar Top Road near Overbrook, where some of the vegetation hangs over. But we have in the past and will do again, send a notice to those property owners that they need to cut back further their vegetation. These flail mowers that are used for roadside mowers are some of the most expensive pieces of equipment that we have. They're very difficult to maintain. You can imagine when a rock hits one of those things. So roadside mowing is one of those things that I believe a lot of people, a lot of property owners have unreasonable expectations that I live in a rural area, even though I own this, township's gonna come and mow this area that I don't want, I just mow this area. That is not a reasonable expectation. You've heard me say this before. One of the hardest things we do is tell people, no, we can't mow that, and that is not our responsibility to mow it. Again, there are certain areas with hairpin turns or other features that make it a little more important or reasonable to keep the vegetation down. But yes, roadside mowing is a very difficult subject. I know that the two commissioners who are liaisons for public works, Ms. Rao and Mr. Batdorf, have heard us talk about this issue a number of times. Thanks for bringing it up, because it is actually quite an important issue. If I could, a PSA, anyone who has trees that are overhanging the road, trim them back. We're snow plowing. If they're below 14 feet, you might get a notice from the township, so that catches on the top of the trucks, the big trucks. And you might not get your road plowed the way you want, because the truck's gonna have to veer out and not get the top of it stuck on your tree. So please trim your trees down. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
One more question on Freeman's role. I mean, maybe that's a question to the engineer. I don't know who's the right person to get feedback on that.
With regard to the resources, that maybe at the township disposal, in the state, is that where you're going with that?
Just, what do we think about that? Yeah, he raised a concern. I said, is this something that anybody's noticed?
It's not the only road with the condition that Mr. Nowakarski is citing. There's one right down the street, turning from Church Road, going into Moton and turning right onto Scenic is the same phenomenon. That being said, what we would have to do is get from Mr. Rogoski a quote for studying the road. Please keep in mind that PennDOT approved the design of that road. They had to approve the design of both of those roads because they're both state roads. We can certainly get a quote from Mr. Rogoski to study the question that Mr. Nowakarski is bringing up, and then you can make a decision based on whatever the cost of that study would be.
And I can't speak to Joe Rogowski, but I can tell you that when you lay down the set of PennDOT approved plans that they designed based on their PennDOT specifications, they're gonna tell you it's designed within the criteria of designing the road. So it's gonna be difficult.
Right.
So that road was changed to meet the changed road across from 10. It didn't make any sense for route to find for Freeman's Road. It made sense for the new road going in north of Pine Hills, Mr. Whitman's property. That's what it was made. They didn't want to make it straight across because they would have to buy more property across the street from my house to make it straight. This is a quick fix. We need to put a road over here. We can't put it here. We're gonna put it here. We have to make the intersection a 90. And the road portion, I already checked into this. The road portion of Freeman's Road is the bare minimum of a 90-degree turn on new construction road. That's new construction. That's not something that's been around for 40, 50 years. This is brand new construction. And no one looked at this except the landowners, the PennDOT, and PennDOT doesn't care. PennDOT's gonna say, you have to meet these minimums. That's it. They don't care. It's not their, they're gonna get paid. And that paving company was fined because they were paving at midnight. I spoke again here from PennDOT. So that whole intersection was put together for one purpose, not for the general public, for one purpose, the warehouse. So I don't like the fact that we would have to spend money at one township to get a study made. That is ridiculous. If they're state roads, there should be a way for us to go through the paperwork in the state of Pennsylvania, because it's your road, you designed it, you approved it. And they should make the study on it, not from the township. That's not on, it's on our roads. It shouldn't come out of our money. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you.
Does it cost us anything to get a quote?
It doesn't cost you anything to get a quote. Well,
It's what we
going
do.
further may cost you something.
Right. I mean, do you want to get a quote just to see what comes back? That's a question for the board. Doesn't mean we have to do anything to Gene's point, but if it comes back and it's a crazy number.
Good idea. Understand what it costs. To your point, Mr. Nowinski. No, that is not fair. That it would have to be paid for by the township. Your plight would have to be taken up with the former board.
No, I don't want to get a quote. It costs $3 million to redo that intersection. You talk about wasting money. That's what you're doing by getting a quote. We're not fixing a road. It's a state road. They don't want to hear it. End of story. That's my opinion. I know it doesn't matter.
So. Yeah.
I don't think a quote's gonna hurt anything. I'm happy to get a quote and we can see what it is.
Why not? If there's other costs, and if it comes back, if it's a number we don't like, then we don't act on it. But from my explain, he just said we shouldn't spend any.
What you don't like? Maybe we should establish that now.
Well, I think he said we don't like Mr. Radford, and I think
Yeah,
the
okay,
point
well,
being, the
then
board
let's go ahead and
collectively,
establish what we don't like.
I could speak without being interrupted, that'd be nice. If the board collectively doesn't like the number, you know, there's 5 people, there has to be a majority voting. Then we don't do it.
So why don't we just establish some arbitrary figure now?
Because I don't play an arbitrary.
Well, what do you play? Then let's just establish the number.
Well, the number we're discussing right now, Mr. Battle, is free. To cost
Then if it costs anything more than free, we don't do it.
Okay. Mr. Badwick, how about, since this is your exercise and let's play your game, what's your number?
0.
Okay, cool. So if you're not arguing in good faith, you're just playing games here. Let's move on.
That's the way I feel. You can do anything you want.
Right,
My
but you,
input, no. My input is 0.
sure, and
I
you don't care.
to spend it.
My point being, Mr. Badwick, that you don't care what the number is because you just said you. So it is meaningless to debate with you what the number is. The cost of getting a quote is 0.
Sir, you can certainly discuss it among yourself. Debate it on.
I
All for that.
I don't know what sort of number to expect, Mr. Badler. I'm not an engineer. I'm not a civil engineer who understands roads. Once we get into the budget and start looking at numbers, perhaps some numbers will make sense more than others, but I think we should just move on, and if we want to get a quote, we can do that.
Is this something we need to vote on, or is this a non-event type of thing?
I don't think a vote is necessary.
No, vote is necessary.
What do you think, Coach? Are you on? Just vote. All right. It sounds like at least 3 of us say if it's free, let's just get a vote.
Thank you.
Okay, Chief Madison Winchester, with the police report.
Thank you. Good evening. You'll see on the agenda, item A of the police is the recent movement that was presented to the board and approved by the board at the last meeting has created a vacancy position in the lieutenant's rank. And I'd like the board to consider authorization for myself to promote the eligible sergeant to that vacant position. Which the process is in motion and should be hopefully in place pending approval from the board by early next week.
I'll make the motion.
Mr. Greg Miller,
Yes.
Mr. Badger,
Yes.
Mr. Donnell.
Yes.
Mr. Bill Miller,
Yes.
Ms. Rao.
Yes.
Thank you. The other item, the last item I have is to promote and announce the trunk or treat event we're going to be holding again this year on October 17th in the parking lot area of the Government Intermediate School. And if anyone enjoyed it last year, it is held in cooperation with the PTO Fall Family event that the school puts on. And it's those two events occurring at the same time really created an incredibly enjoyable environment for everybody that came down. So please, if you're not doing anything on the 17th in the evening hours, and we'll advertise on our Facebook page, please stop by. We'll have the officers there parking their trunks, and we'll have hopefully officers from the neighboring departments and not only officers, but other organizations. And we'll hand out some candy and some popcorn and it'll be fun. So please, October 17th, mark it in your calendars for trunk or treat event and come enjoy it, please.
You know, but you said started what time?
It started last year at 5 and it ran till about 6:30. So this is the time of year when it's usually fairly dark at that time. That's the whole goal, but it's not too dark. But at that point, when it gets dark, I don't know about everybody else, I get really sleepy and 5:30, 6:30 feels like 9:30, 10:30. So you gotta have it early, it's getting older.
Thank you. Moving on to the fire department with Chief Jim Bingham.
Good evening, commissioners and the public. The first item in the date, NetEd finally showed up, connected power to the building. We are now awaiting part of this, their automatic transfer switch, which is now due to ship up to the Friday, October 3rd. It's a key vital piece of the infrastructure, and when they were out, set the transformers, tied it into the environment pole. And now we're just awaiting this transfer switch so we can keep things moving. That's the big news. NetEd showed up. We have power to the building, we just don't have power to the building, so. I'll say that number two is that I've had a discussion in regards to some potential work quality contractors mobilized, and if I get this wrong, I'm gonna ask Gene to jump in here. To do some potential work on our handicap ramps or entrances on the building here to make them meet the criteria of need to get around. And there's some numbers put to this, but some of this is going to have to be depending on where we are with our numbers when we come to that point, when they mobilize here to pave the other items and do some more of the concrete work on the lower part for the actual fire station. And I know Gina worked up a spreadsheet with some basic numbers on it. I'm not the author of it, so I'm going to encourage her to explain it, but this is one of those things that once they mobilize, potentially have this done, if there's money left in the body issuance, we'll hold it in the contract. But I'm gonna let her take it over from this point to talk about the actual bond fund spreadsheet.
The bottom line is, first of all, that the ordinance that resulted in the bond issuance in October of 2020 stated that other campus improvements are allowable for the use of this money. The second thing you need to know is that the parking lots on the upper and lower levels of this building, the north and south sides of this building, are original to the building, which was built in 1992. They've got issues, if you hadn't noticed, especially on the south side of the building. The handicap ramps also need to be addressed. And the one on the north side of the building has been fixed several times by Public Works. It really needs to be replaced. Those are things that just need to happen. And I would be recommending this regardless of where the money came from, because they need to happen, especially the handicap ramps need to happen. There have been various items of savings throughout the fire station construction project. There have been credits to the contracts. And I have to commend Chief Bean and Commissioner Bill Miller for being watchdogs on the contracts. And we expect to have some allowance left in the general contractor's contract to take almost half of the paving cost of when they mobilize and pave the parking lot for the fire station, where the firefighters would park their personal vehicles. Using the rest of the allowance in the contract and about $127,000 from the rest of the bond money to pave the upper and lower levels of the building and do the handicap ramps. And of course, the engineer who's doing project management for us, Atlas Engineering, has gone through all 4 contracts and looked at where the allowances stand. Each contract has a certain allowance in it. What we're basically asking the board to do is to authorize us, when the contractor for the paving is mobilized, if these numbers are still holding, we're having a fire station meeting tomorrow. We would like authorization to do this paving work and this concrete work for the handicap ramp. That's where we're at.
I'm all for it. Do we need a motion for that?
Okay, we should.
Okay, I'll make a motion.
One second. Good question. Curious. And I'm not opposed to proceeding with that. What were we to not utilize most of those credits or the allowances? What happens then?
You would have to use general fund.
No, and I mean, not in terms of how we would pay for it. What happens to those allowances and credits?
You would have a change order to the negative.
Okay.
To the plus side. And you still may end up, as the board is well aware, so far, we have not had any cost change orders to the increase. We've had a change order in terms of increase in extension of time. Now, the electrical contract, because of all the goings on with Med Ed, I can't promise that won't have a small increase, but on the balance, right now, it's projected that a balancing change order overall, all 4 contracts will be to under budget for relative to the bid amounts. Each contract has a certain amount of allowance built into it. There have been several credits. For example, we cut one item out of the general contract to the tune of $47,000. There's another item we cut out of the general contract to the tune of $18,000. There are other things that we're still talking about that may result in other credits. That's why it's a little bit of a floating number. We're trying to get those credits to maximize, and to maximize the use of the bond money. We do have enough bond money to do this project as we stand right now, but we also have an arbitrage payment due October 29th, which is not an optional payment, to the tune of $21,298.99. And that has to do with, I've explained arbitrage before, but that has to do with the length of time that we've had the bond money and the length of time it took to get the project going, there's a certain fee, if you will, that needs to be paid relative to that. So right now, both the arbitrage payment and this paving and the concrete work are all covered under the bond line as things stand right now. And we still may end up with a very small credit, but as we've been looking at, as the engineer has helped us look at the condition of these items, it only makes sense. And the other thing you have to know is that the blacktop plant's closed end of October. They're very small window. That's why we're bringing it to you now. Otherwise, you'll be waiting till next year and you'll be repairing potholes in the park.
And as I understand, the handicap ramps are kind of expensive and the township doesn't have the capability to actually construct those ramps. So it has to be by a specialized company that can do that.
That's, they're very technical, down to the ocean, down to the fraction of a degree when they check these. We're nowhere near where we should. Because if you come through my building, which I love, not that we think, or through prior to being done, you'll see lots of things in there that are tied to ADA. Because ADA covers such a vast number of areas. That really makes you think about all the different things, but this is one that people use all the time. No offense, but one incident will far outweigh what's on this big. I'm sorry, do you know how much of a buffer do we have?
Well, so right now, the balance as of the end of August in the bond fund was 4,003,000 and a couple of dollars change after that. We have this pay application for September to the tune of 935,000, which leaves us 3,068,000. If the full contract prices are subtracted from that, no credits, it leaves us with $127,225. And with some unused allowances estimate of 35,000, which leaves us an availability of 162,225. The paving cost not covered by the rest of the GC's allowance is 136,000. So 162 minus 136, you get available 26,000, just under 26,000. And we have to take the arbitrage payment out of that, the $21,298.99, which leaves us a remainder of about $4,600 if nothing changes in the meantime. So, and we are required to, by the way, to use all this, the bond money by the end of the year.
So this is one time you can rely on the company rules, but what now will actually be, and we will actually have that money necessary for us to make a motion here on how to use the remainder of the fund. You want?
We definitely need a motion on this for sure. And yes, I'm confident we have money, and Atlas has been watchdogging this for us because these are issues we've been hoping that we would be able to get this done. That's one reason we're watchdogging the credits so hard on this project.
I just want to make sure I'm following the amounts involved. The remaining balance plus any credits would fully cover the expected cost of the work.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
About 4,000 bucks over, I think that's what Gene said.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I was hearing that.
Yeah.
That's good. Arbitrage comes back into the project because it's set so much, but obviously.
I do have, for Greg's information, I have so the arbitrage payment calculation at 21,000 and change was done by Pliget because they were holding money during the arbitrage period. And I've asked them to recalculate and make sure that that is going to stay at that amount. And right now it appears it is. Obviously, I'll be very anxious to make sure to get that confirmation before we do anything.
I'm sorry, do you say by the end of October is when we need to commit?
October 29th, 2025, we have to make, within 60 days of that, we have to make the arbitrage payment And, the blacktop plants close at the end of October. So with both of these things are coming at the same time, we have to use the rest of the bond money, which, trust me, you can use it by the end of the year. And close out that account.
Theoretically, I guess we could look, we could authorize today, but then look back in our October meeting, just to make sure nothing goofy has happened,
Oh.
basically.
Absolutely, we would keep, and I realize that this is kind of bouncy ball situation. I totally realize that. If it weren't for the time of year, we wouldn't be as vague as we are. I mean, I'm not totally vague, I do have numbers, but I would feel more comfortable if we had it to the penny. But the reason we don't is that things are moving day to day. So for example, it's not daylight right now, but in the daylight, you can see where they have the forms for the curving for the concrete contract, preparing for the concrete contractor to come. So we're talking about these handicap ramps could be underway in a very short period of time. And then of course, shortly after that, the paving contractor is gonna come right behind. So if it weren't for the time of year, we would be giving it a little more time. I definitely want to update the board in October about how this all goes. You will probably be able to see very shortly.
Essentially, the concrete work's gonna happen before you blacktop. Yeah, a lot is things are gonna be backer, hence why they need to preserve them. The ramps, there's confirmed the ability to use a backer for the blacktop. So there's some things there's a tremendous amount of concrete work on the outside of the building. They're going to be starting some of that in portions so they can prep to do the blacktop. If the weather decides to turn and the ambient temperature and then about is at what 42 degrees, it has to be on the average for blacktop to really keep things moving. From a
36 and rising.
it's got
Super topping. The one other thing is, I looked at that and saying it's also, public works has been putting a certain amount of, sporadically, fixing landscaping out, because we have to dig out those existing sidewalks. And the landscaping on either side of the ramps, and also we help with some of the demolition, all the way. And then we'll paint the lines on the parking lot and it's all said and done. And that was stated before that, yes.
The PSA to the public is if you're coming here to the building and you are directed to either park on one side of the building or another, which is not what you originally expected, it's because of all of this stuff going on. We'll try to be very clear about where people should park, how they should come into the building, but it's going to be, obviously, the police is here, we have to do one side of the parking lot so that they can go out the other side. When that is available to be driven on, then you've got to switch. So there's going to be a lot of back and forth going on when you arrive here for various meetings or if you're paying your sewer bill or something.
Apologies, Jeff. Sorry for the tangent. Just didn't feel confident knowing that I was going to vote. Fully understanding what I was thinking for. Thank you for that.
So I have a motion and a second to authorize this work. Should I call for the vote? Mr. Badger,
Yes.
Mr. Donnell.
Yes.
Mr. Bill Miller,
Yes.
Mr. Greg Miller,
yes.
Ms. Rao.
Yes.
Thank you, and I do appreciate the board's flexibility with this. I know this was an unexpected topic.
Next with administration, Jean.
The first two items can actually be taken together. These are when you have a plan that involves sewage, always sanitary sewer, sometimes on-lot sewage. There's a package of documentation called a sewage planning module, and at the end of the engineers for treatment and transportation and conveyance and the developer, all of these entities weighing in, And after a public comment period, if it is in the Wyomissing Creek watershed, which the first one is 719 Old Lancaster Pike is in the Wyomissing Creek watershed. So there was a public comment period, even though it's only one toilet room. It is required for the Board of Commissioners to adopt a resolution which authorizes administration to send this package of documentation into the DEP for their approval. And in relation to item 2, the Missionary Sisters, even though that is a much bigger plan, it's over 20 hotel units, for lack of a better description, in this retreat center. It did not have the required public comment period because it is not in the Wyomissing Creek. It is in the Angelica Creek watershed. Both of these plans require a resolution from the board allowing us to send the documentation into the DEP for the DEP's review. The DEP hasn't even reviewed it yet. So that's what those two are about. So I would need a motion.
And I move to send, authorize administration for the sewer planning modules for both the 719 Old Lancaster Pike and my sister's just flood extension plans.
I'll second.
Mr. Donnell,
Yes.
Mr. Bill Miller,
Yes.
Mr. Greg Miller,
Yes.
Mr. Bachdor.
Yes.
Ms. Rao.
Yes.
Thank you. I will say I've received a number of phone calls from people both in Moton and Cumru asking what's happening at the intersection of Fairmont and Old Lancaster Pike. That is the 719 Old Lancaster Pike land development plan. It's actually a facility for the transfer of fiber optic. It is kind of like a pump station for electrons. That's what it is. Some people have asked me if it's going to be a hotel, a warehouse, low-income housing, all kinds of, people are coming up with all kinds of stuff. It is not an occupied building except for maintenance. It's not even at all.
This is it's on vacation for phone.
Okay, then, I'm cool with being geeky and pedantic about it. Okay, the next item is I am requesting the board adopt a resolution allowing us to dispose of certain records. For the board's information, there is a manual adopted by the state and subsequently adopted by the township called the Municipal Records Retention Manual. It is promulgated by the Pennsylvania Historical Museum Commission, and it provides rules for how long we retain certain records. There are some records that are retained forever. There are other records that are allowed to be disposed of after a certain number of years, and it is not standard. It varies depending on the type of record. On your G drive, there were two groups of records that were noted: sewer receipts for certain years up to 2017, and I believe business registration. We're asking the board to adopt a resolution allowing us to dispose of those records.
I'll make a motion.
Mr. Greg Miller,
Yes.
Mr. Bachdor.
Yes.
Mr. Donnell.
Yes.
Mr. Bill Miller.
Yes.
Ms. Rao.
Yes.
Thank you very much. The next item. The board may recall at the last meeting, I spoke about the minimum municipal obligation for pensions. This is the amount of money that is required to be contributed by the township to the right now 2 pension plans. And you set the minimum municipal obligation for the succeeding year in September of the preceding year. So the motion you made and adopted last meeting was for the 2026 minimum municipal obligation. At this time last year, the Board of Commissioners adopted the 2025 minimum municipal obligation. Fortunately, in late September, and this time it happens that we have a meeting at the end of September, we received aid or a grant from the state to subsidize the minimum municipal obligation of the current year. It does not fully cover the minimum municipal obligation, but it certainly makes a very large dent in it. And if you read what was on the G drive, we received over $600,000, and there is a formula for splitting it between the police pension plan and the non-uniform pension plan. There's a very specific formula on how to do that. Where this money comes from is there is a pool of money called the state foreign fire insurance tax. Foreign means not out of country, means out of state. That entities that are domiciled out of the state for their fire insurance pay a 2% tax. That money goes into a pool and the state divides that money up by certain complex formulas. That money provides two things, probably more, but two things that concern the township. One is fire relief money comes from that same pool. And we receive $65,000 in fire relief money that gets passed on to the Fire Relief Association. And there are certain things that money can be spent on, equipment for firefighters. The other, the money that we receive from the foreign fire insurance tax is this state aid for the pension plan. So I prepared a resolution for this to be divided between the two pension plans. What Nick Fever from Herbine was referring to is there's a rule that within 30 days of receiving this money, it has to be deposited into the two pension plans. And for some reason in 2024, that didn't happen in a timely fashion. Obviously, we will make sure it happens in a timely fashion for 2025. Giving you all that background, I'm asking the Board of Commissioners to adopt the resolution that I prepared for distribution of the state aid into the two pension.
In the partial that you're talking about, the difference, where does that come from?
It comes from mostly the general fund because police are funded only out of the general fund and a good portion of the non-uniform is funded out of the general fund. But to the extent other payroll is supported by other funds, for example, the sewer fund and the fire fund and refuse fund all contribute pieces of it, but most of it comes from the general fund. And that is budgeted.
I'll make the motion.
I'll second.
And I have Mr. Donnell abstaining. Mr. Greg Miller,
Yes.
Mr. Bachelor,
Yes.
Mr. Donnell, abstained. Mr. Bill Miller,
Yes.
Ms. Rao.
Yes.
Thank you very much. And I will be paying at the same time as we distribute the state aid to the pension funds. I will be paying the entirety of the MMO. So it doesn't get forgotten. That would be very bad. The last item I have, the board may recall receiving a communication from a homeowner at your last meeting about a real estate tax bill penalty. This is exactly the same situation from the individual whose power of attorney for the homeowner at 207 Ardmore Avenue. And that was, if you may recall, waiving the 10% penalty, but not the 2% discount.
I'm sorry, so this is the same situation twice?
Yes.
Exact same thing?
Yes.
Like same bank and same everything?
I don't know about the same thing.
It's the same situation.
The same
but it's a
scenario.
matter of power of attorney, the loan's taken over for the older man. So I was thinking just, get rid of the penalty, but,
No, this is a second property where the same issues occurred with the bank.
To clarify the issue, is that the person paid shortly before the cutoff and
Yes, they paid on the last day. Supposedly, the bank cuts the bank check, sent it in, And then for some reason, the post office returned it, the bank redeposited it. And then nobody noticed. And then they got a late notice from the county that the county township, real estate tax bill was not paid.
I feel the same way as I did last time. We made honest effort to pay the bill. Would not have gotten the discount. We should not give them the discount, but we should not penalize them for having made an honest effort to pay their bill on that.
Yeah, I mean, I think we kind of set the precedent, but like, you probably can hear what Kelsey said, like, I thought this was just gonna be a one-off. I'm surprised to hear it again.
I'm not,
Oh, you're not?
no.
Well, I guess that's kind of where I'm heading with this, like, yeah, we can't keep doing this over and over.
I mean, can we see that? Like, we're not just taking this person's word at their word that they like sent the check, like we have a paper trail that goes, they sent it. Right,
Just like the previous one, they show that the money was sent. But why the post office sent it back, we don't know. We can certainly ask, Betsy is also the tax collector, is one of the entities involved. We can also make sure that she has a copy of the statement that shows that the money came back in. My concern is that for both of these instances, I would notice a couple of $1,000 back into my bank. So that's kind of a head scratcher.
And my concern is that, you know, you're gonna get more and more of these case by case basis complaints and asking for forgiveness, the more you continue to set this kind of precedent. That was what I was saying, but I don't think everybody heard.
I have a hard time believing that someone doesn't take notice, say for example, her taxes are $4,000, that she doesn't take notice that $4,000 got redeposited in her account. Sometimes I take notice when I get $20 extra in my account and they don't see $4,000 approximately. You gotta be kidding me. You're opening up a can of worms and you're gonna get a lot more people with the same song and dance. And hope you're prepared, because I voted no on the first time. You know, and you granted it 4-1, but you're opening up a can of worms to set up the township for more of these cases.
Not be a matter of noticing, just some people just don't look at their bank accounts that often. It could be that simple.
Come on, come me a break. You know, they're not checking their checking account and see this money come back in. You got to be kidding me. You're in a banking business, son. Cut me a break.
Yeah, there's a lot of people that don't look at this. All I'm saying is we can't draw a conclusion. We don't know these folks. I don't know what they do or don't do. But it is a valid point that we do need to set some sort of.
But I would have to draw the line some point, and I think Bill made an excellent and has made in the statement. Even though I know I agree that he said it was 4-1, I thought we got these folks a break, but boy, coming back to the well a second time, no way.
well, the one, yeah, thank you, Kelsey. I would say that nobody is coming back to the well a second time, and I would add that we do know something else about this case. That there is a power of attorney involved because there is an elderly person who is managing this estate. And perhaps that's part of the reason why they didn't notice the bill come back. No, I don't know that. That's the point. I don't know anything, and I think that's what Greg's point is, but I do know they sent the bill to Mr. Badler. But what I do know, no, I'm not making assumptions, you are, and our other colleague over Zoom is. About somebody being irresponsible about their bank account. We don't know whether they were irresponsible or not, but we do know there are additional circumstances that's like here with regard to an elderly person and a power of attorney trying to intervene on their behalf. And we do know that they tried to send their bill in on time. So I think it's, in my opinion, a safer approach in terms of.
Well, it's a more generous approach, that's for sure. But you heard our solicitors, give her a professional opinion.
Yeah, I very much respect our solicitors' professional opinion, and I think it's totally valid. What I'm suggesting is that we just don't know, and I'm agreeing with Greg, that somebody is being irresponsible here, as has been insinuated. I think
It's an accusation that we have no foundation, that people are being irresponsible, so we shouldn't call them irresponsible.
Regardless of whether they're irresponsible or not, the bottom line, it wasn't paid, and we do not want to set it at the resident, period. And I agree with that.
And I think that's the same point Kelsey made there, so, well, it's hard not to do this again when we just did it for somebody else. I mean, if I was a litigious person, I would come back and say, hey, we just did this like 2 weeks ago or something like that. Well, I don't know how we don't do that. Now, that said, it doesn't mean that we shouldn't address this topic.
I'm thinking because it's the power of attorney things and maybe there was a legitimate thing going on there, so maybe this one time, just not having paid the penalties, but the full amount.
I'm curious about the potential for litigation. Because we throw around the word precedent quite a bit, but it is often used in the legal definition of the term. What precedent in the legal definitions are we setting here? Is there?
I'm just saying you're setting policy precedent.
Yeah.
And you're gonna get a flood of these case by case, oops, I forgot, or whatever the issue might be, and you're gonna have to look at these over and over and over again to continue to offer people these kind of rights, unfortunately. And I admire your compassion, of course.
How do we handle it from a policy standpoint? Do we write something effectively that says use online bill pay and we don't get it, blah, 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 blah? Do we write this into a policy?
I mean, you certainly can have a written policy if you'd like, but I mean, I think you create policy by the way that you handle these case by case bases and the way that you vote on it going forward and now. If residents understand that, sorry, if you didn't pay your bill, you're gonna be penalized for what you didn't pay, then they're not gonna come ask you for forgiveness over and over again. If you want to handle everything on a case by case basis, that's your choice.
Well, and Kelsey,
I
I
don't
think
really
that's
want to do, candidly.
sure.
So then it's gotta be a hard line.
Well, but here's the thing, I don't think anybody wants to handle this case by case basis and this on a case by case basis. But I think as elected commissioners of the township, we have a duty to the residents of the township to treat them fairly on a case by case basis and not to paint with a broad brush unreasonably. And in this case, in my opinion, what I'm hearing is they tried to pay their bill on time. There are potentially there's circumstances that are outside this person's control. And in my opinion, I think it's reasonable to say, here's the rate when you try to pay your bill.
And I agree with you on this case. But I guess I'm looking at this as a two-step process where.
Yeah, I agree. I think we need to figure this out in the
But let's
future.
figure this out long term too. And I guess maybe it's my corporate environment. If it's not written down, it doesn't exist. It's kind of the way I look at this. I don't know where to write something like this down, like.
So you want to, but do you want to be locked in? So whatever you write down, what are you going to write down? That if someone drops something and forgets to put it in the mail, they don't want to pay the 10% penalty. I mean, where you draw the line is what you need to think about.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that you need to decide tonight, but ultimately, at some point, this board is going to have to decide where that line is drawn, or you're going to continue getting these requests.
And I agree, and I think 100%. I think we need to be locked in, and I think that's the part of the problem here instead of beyond not. And I think if we establish a policy in the near future, that there's no, the conversation stops there.
Because I mean, online bill pay is a relatively new thing, so it's probably not something we have ever contemplated in the past. In terms of the policy perspective, because that's where our problems are coming in here. I don't think people realize, it's being explained last time, that it's not like push the button, check those out, it doesn't work that way.
But in township's job to police what people understand and don't understand about banking. But that's, I'm just trying to get you to think about where you draw the line on how much you can create policy for people's daily lives.
No, what I would suggest is the policy is for ourselves, is that right now, our lack of a policy has put us in this situation. And it is our responsibility to establish a policy to police ourselves, prevent us from having these situations going forward.
Kelsey's point though, like, we have to think about that verbiage.
And I'll just say this, your policy right now is what the bill says. You pay it on time, or you get, or you get the penalty. That is the policy currently. Just put that out there. And I'm not trying,
No,
I'm not gonna sway your
I-
decision, I'm just giving you things to think
I
about.
hear exactly what you're saying. I think it's perfect development.
Right, so maybe go to part two and let's just go with part one. Maybe the lessons.
I mean, I think my position is that we should grant this person relief.
I agree with that.
And if that part one, you're
That's part
referring to,
one, yeah. Part two is long term.
I think we need to discuss how we do it.
So, Mr. Danell, was that a motion to, grant the relief?
It was not, but I would move to grant the relief.
Of the 10%, but not the 2%?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
I'll second that.
Mr. Greg Miller?
No,
Yes, Mr. Bill Miller is a no. Mr. Badger,
No,
Mr. Danell,
Yes.
Ms. Rao. Yes. Thank you.
But I do think, I mean, going forward, I hear what you're saying totally. And I also hear what you're saying. With regard to the policy is as stated, that makes sense. I guess how
how do you want to bend it? How do you want to post it? I mean, what, how reinterpret it? Or, I mean, that's the bill, period.
that's not the question I was gonna ask. Is that your question? How would you like to bend it or reinterpret it?
I would like to have it remain just as it is.
Okay, thank you. So now let me ask my question. I guess. How can we work towards a situation? Understanding that we've gotten ourselves to where we are. Is there anything we can do proactively to preempt these circumstances?
I don't think you can preempt anything on a case by case basis, but I think you can make it publicly known that at this point, you now realize that the policy is what it says on the bill and that case by case basis aren't going to be given much merit or much leeway going forward. And sorry, that's just the way it's got to be. That's our policy. We have to make sure we're treating everyone the same.
why should anybody pay their bills on time? It doesn't seem to matter. You put dates on the bill for a reason, you give discounts on the bill for a reason, you have penalties on the bill for a reason. But it doesn't seem to matter if I have a good excuse. And that's my opinion.
It's kind of the same as we dealt with the refuse issue, right? Like the first year that you dealt with it, it was like, okay, now we'll give you another period of time. The second year that it happened, at some point, the township did what the township needed to do to get those bills to the residents on time. I know there's a dispute about that, but ultimately the township can only do what it does. And at some point, the responsibility has to not be on the township, because you're already abiding by the policy it's set.
One thing I'm curious about is it doesn't seem clear why this happened. That's the question we don't know the answer to.
Is the post office, for some reason we don't know, returned it?
Well, the reason I say that is because when you bring up the refuse issue, it seems like the question always lies with, well, what the hell is the post office doing and why is this happening? And so I think that's perhaps where my mind goes. And maybe there's nothing we can do aside from like publicly declare we're not doing this shit anymore. But
That's your point, Andy. I think that's the answer, right? So I think everybody's right.
Right.
Right, but I think everybody's right. Like, I think Kelsey said, it's pretty plain and simple that the bill is what it is. But, you know, there is occasions where we have to re-examine that on a case by case basis. Even though we may not necessarily want to do it on a case by case basis, because now we're trying to litigate or write into policy these nuanced type situations, basically. Right.
That's why we said initially, and I agree with you, you can set policy by a case, you set your policy by case, correct?
Well, you can set your policy that way, you can change your policy that way, but it ultimately, the policy you have in place is what's in place now, which is the bill. And I think, you know, if the policy is, okay, we're no longer going to offer any type of relief because of post office issues, because there just are too many now. You know, because we don't know where it goes. We have no control over what the post office does or doesn't do. And it seems to be a recurring issue, not just here, but everywhere. I mean, I've had problems personally. So, and maybe that's something to think about, but that's my 2 cents on policy setting.
yeah, I guess that's where I like, regarding this whole family of issues, my mind goes into, is there any way we can pull on that thread? Or at least apply pressure and ask questions and say like, what's going on here? We keep getting hammered with issues that we have to like litigate because of post office issues.
Do you want to call Newman?
Yeah, I don't know who that person is, who is that Lovejoy, that's the head of the US Post Office?
Is there like, just like,
No, I mean, we're joking around, but in all seriousness, like, I don't even know who they call. There's no idea.
that's what I'm wondering, does anybody know if there's any?
What do we need to establish at this point here with this issue?
And I don't think.
Are we just hashing, we're just talking the talk?
Yeah, I don't think you need to establish anything else. I have a direction and that I'll pass on to the tax collector. I would point out that this is not the same post office issue as the refuse bill. It's only the same in concept, but not in detail, because the county township real estate tax bills are sent as bulk mail by the county. Goes through different channels than the refuse bills and the sewer bills. So these are not, it is a postal service wide phenomenon, not specific to a specific post office.
Could we as a township write a letter to our senator?
But it won't get there.
Perhaps we can email our senator.
I think it's online bill pay, that's the answer.
And that brings up, an online bill pay, the decision making on that has to do with cyber. That's a whole nother ball of wax. So anyway, thank you.
All right, Mr. McNichols with Public Works.
Good evening. Last year, we engaged in an extreme bank restoration project along the Limestone Creek in the area of the former Richard's Bakery that has worked out very well, protecting the sewer main. Everything's healed up nicely, and Conservation District allowed us to move on from that project. So we had a reduction in the amount of the original contract. And I apologize, I don't know what the full cost of the original contract was. However, we do need a final payment to the contractor in the amount of $16,702.01.
We also need approval of a change order reducing the overall contract amount by $11,390.40. Both parts of the same money.
Yeah, I make a motion. Pay the bill.
I'll second.
Mr. Badger,
Yes.
Mr. Janelle,
Yes.
Mr. Greg Miller,
Yes.
Bill Miller. Yes, your yes, Bill,
Yes.
and Ms. Rao.
Yes.
Thank you.
We received notification a few days ago that PennDOT is going to be overlaying Route 625 from a point just south of Route 724 up to Lancaster Avenue and Reading in the city. That's all that curbing work has been going on, all the handicap ramps. I actually thought that project wasn't going to finish up until the spring, but things must have moved on to PennDOT and their contractor. So we just want to give you a warning that there'll be night work on 625 in that section. Only a little bit of it is in actually Cumru Township, but most of us end up having to drive that way at some point. Other than that, I don't have anything else.
Okay, thank you. Solicitor report.
All right, I just want to clarify for the minutes that, when I was giving the overview of Alan Schallenberger's letter, it did include more than just his position and his client's position on stipulations. That was entered into. It did discuss, actions that the board had taken in the past that his client would consider bad faith towards the developer. That letter is, subject to right to know request, I believe. It doesn't have anything to do with litigation, so if the public wants to see it, submit a right to know request. All right, so at the last meeting, the board did approve the authorization to draft and advertise an ordinance to rescind the LERTA ordinance for the Route 10 Realty properties, the 2 parcels. I did draft that ordinance and it's up for consideration for adoption tonight. It was advertised on September 21st, 2025.
I have a question.
Yeah, if you have any questions about the stipulation or anything else regarding LERTA, I'm happy to answer those before you.
Real quickly though, if we adopt this LERTA ordinance now one way or the other, shoot it down, does that preclude us from going back to trying to negotiate with the owner?
No.
Okay.
I mean, you could repeal this LERTA ordinance today and in 3 months from now decide you're gonna put these properties back into LERTA based on a different taxation schedule, if that's what you decide.
Okay, great, that's all I need.
I think part of the conversation, if I recall correctly, was that the land use seems to be unknown at this point with several potential changes swirling in the air. I think the land use, the intention of the parcel previously changed. So as I see it, this is protecting us from the unknown, and should something become known, we can always rebring it forward.
The plans that are currently in process and in review that have been stayed pursuant to the stipulation that all of the parties to the validity challenge litigation entered into is the plan that's on the table. So that plan has not changed. It's still the warehouse plan. The idea that there would potentially be a new plan coming through was something that was suggested, but right now you have to remember the warehouse plan is still the plan on the table in review and in process.
Got it. Okay, so
It may never move forward. That's where you're heading. You have to get that correct.
right,
Because right now, and I agree with Mr. Schallenberger's opinion representation that yes, according to the stipulation, the Board of Commissioners is prevented from taking any action on any land development plan applicable to those 2 parcels. It's also, the stipulation also protects the board from being forced to either approve or reject the actual North Point development plan until the challenge reaches a final unappealable resolution. So this was meant to protect the township actually from having some sort of deemed approval of the North Point development plan itself.
Right.
So it's protecting, the stipulation protects both parties in that sense.
but
Alerted, it does not have
right, I
anything to
would
do
say
with
the stipulation
development.
is that I'm taking action against the plan. We're not taking action against any plan here.
And I agree, is it true that staying all action on any plan for those properties prevents a landowner from being able to formally get into the LERTA program because there are no improvements being made because there's nothing happening with the plan? Yes, that's true. However, LERTA itself and the ordinance that was adopted it is in no way mentioned in that stipulation. That document, that stipulation was negotiated and reviewed by every party for the validity challenge. If the developer and the owner wanted some protection for LRTA not to have to be repealed pending everything going on with litigation, they could have negotiated for that. But it's not specifically in stipulation. So I think that in my opinion, I don't think the stipulation actually prevents the LRTA ordinance from being repealed at this time. It doesn't mean that one of the attorneys involved in that litigation can say, well, we think it does and we're gonna fight you on that at some point in the future or in court at some point. But in my opinion, the stipulation doesn't directly address LRTA. So I think the board has a strong argument if it wants to repeal the LRTA ordinance that there's nothing preventing the board from doing that.
And, you know, we just saw the report from the auditor, there's a lot of brackets in there. So we certainly need the tax revenue.
I would move to adopt the ordinance as advertised.
Also, and that,
Mr. Miller,
yes.
Mr. Bachelor,
Yes.
Mr. Janelle,
Yes.
Mr. Bill Miller,
No.
Ms. Rao.
Yes.
And that's all I have for tonight. Thanks.
Okay, so you can read over the correspondence, and the next thing is the executive session. So do you want to give an overview, Kelsey?
Certainly, yes. We just had an executive session to discuss a personnel issue regarding public works, litigation, regarding the Route 10 realty litigation involving 601 Governor Drive, and an update on our IAFF negotiations, which is a collective bargaining agreement matter. The only action that I'm asking the board to consider is to make a motion to authorize me to terminate the litigation regarding 601 Governor Drive.
I'll make a motion to terminate litigation of 601 Governor Drive.
I'll second.
Mr. Miller,
Yes.
Mr. Bachelor,
Yes.
Mr. Janelle,
Yes.
Mr. Bill Miller,
Yes.
Ms. Rao.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, and reminders, Board of Commissioners meetings for October 2025, 10/21/25 at 7 p.m., a regular meeting. Planning Commission meeting, October 6th at 6 p.m. Municipal Authority, October 9th at 8:30 a.m. Township Administration Office closed Monday, October 13th for Columbus Day holiday. Do I hear a motion to adjourn?
Second.
The PSA is that leaf season starts October 14th.
All right. Okay, Chief.